The governing party of Britain, the Conservative Party, are radicalising the population against the Muslim community, and this is a key part of their election strategy. Rishi Sunak attempted to present himself and his party as a reasonable voice against the sea of extremism and division that exists in Britain.
We're a reasonable country and a decent people.
This claim of being reasonable came in his emergency address after the election of George Galloway, whom he attempted to claim was an extremist, anti-Semite, pro-terrorist supporting politician supported by the likes of Nick Griffin.
And it is beyond alarming that last night the Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th, who glorifies Hezbollah and is endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the BNP.
But the Tories are not a reasonable voice. Not only do they pander to the Islamophobic and xenophobic sentiments that exist in Britain, they actually helped create them within wider society. This anti-Muslim xenophobia permeates throughout the Conservative Party. It's not just one or two bad apples. For instance, in a poll in 2019 of Conservative Party members, it found 69% believe that there are areas in Britain that operate under Sharia law. 45% believe there are areas in Britain in which non-Muslims are not able to enter, and that 39% believed Islamist terrorists reflect a widespread hostility to Britain amongst the Muslim community. In another poll in the same year, 56% of Conservative members surveyed said that Islam was generally a threat to the British way of life. Now, I just want you to imagine if we remove the term Muslim and Islam with Jews or Judaism, how would the above sound? It's not just these opinions permeate throughout the Conservative Party members, rather this has been created and reinforced by the senior mainstream politicians of this party.
So Suella Braverman has weighed in her inimitable style and said Islamists are in charge of Britain now.
And when Lee Anderson, the party's former deputy chairman, was asked to respond to Suella Braverman's statements, he claimed that actually it's the Islamists have got control of London's Mayor Sadiq Khan, and as a result of this, he was suspended. Interestingly, Suella Braverman wasn't suspended from the party, but Lee Anderson was. Even then, no one in the Conservative Party would admit that his statements, i.e. Lee Anderson's statements, constituted Islamophobia. They were just wrong.
Let's try this a different way. Was it Islamophobic?
What he said was wrong, and robust action was taken, and the whip was removed within 24 hours.
Minister, was it Islamophobic?
Nick, it was wrong.
Minister, I'm going to, and I'm normally a very polite man, I'm actually going to effectively put the fact, I'll ask you now for the third time, I've asked you 6 times why it was necessary. For the third time, was it Islamophobic?
Nick, it was wrong.
Lee Anderson, like with all the Tories across the party, attempt to deny that exists anything considered Islamophobia. An irrational hatred and prejudice against Muslims simply does not exist.
And this Islamophobia, I don't really understand what that means other than you're criticising what's in the Quran or a religion. It's okay to criticise a religion. Islamophobia is not racist. I don't even know why we've got this word.
You see, Rishi, with all your attempts to criticise the far right as being divisive, you have no problems with your MPs, the former leader of Britain, the former leader of your party, sitting with Steve Bannon, the guy who was behind the Muslim immigration ban when he was an advisor to Donald Trump, and who praises far-right anti-Muslim tin pot activists like Tommy Robinson. So while denouncing the far right and trying to give mealy-mouthed words to the Muslim community, you and your party is steeped in Islamophobia, and not only that, but give fuel to the actual far right. But these are only just recent examples of senior Tory MPs. We have a whole history of senior Tory politicians and councillors who have made disgusting remarks about Islam and Muslims. For instance, Boris Johnson, another former Prime Minister, wrote, "To any non-Muslim reader of the Quran, Islamophobia, fear of Islam, seems a natural reaction and indeed exactly what the text is intended to provoke. Judged purely on its scripture, to say nothing of what is preached in the mosque, it is the most viciously sectarian of all religions in its heartlessness towards the unbelievers." This is what Boris Johnson actually wrote about the Quran and about this hatred that he has for the Quran and what he perceives from it. Linton Crosby, political strategist for Boris Johnson's mayoral campaign, said that he should not try to gain support from them effing Muslims. His words. Instead, focusing on wavering voters in the outer suburbs. Who are the ones in the outer suburbs? They are the non-Muslim, white primarily Londoners. And in October 2001, former Prime Minister, another one, Margaret Thatcher, was accused of Islamophobia when she said, "I have not heard enough condemnation of 9/11 from these Muslim priests." You know, because all Muslims must prove their humanity and constantly condemn any action any Muslim does anywhere in the world. Michael Gove MP said he wanted to target political Islam, which he called a virus. And Gove was also behind the gaslighting of the now debunked Trojan horse affair, which claimed supposed Muslim extremists were trying to take over schools in predominant Muslim areas. This was Michael Gove. Then we have Bob Blackman, the Harrow East MP, after he retweeted an anti-Islam message from the hard right activist Tommy Robinson, the Tin Pot activist again, and also hosted a hardline Hindu nationalist Tapan Ghosh in Parliament. Zach Goldsmith campaigned as London Mayor, where he attempted to at least insinuate that Sadiq Khan was a closet extremist. And one of his members of his campaign team, when he was told by somebody, a potential voter, that he was voting for Sadiq Khan, he turned around, this campaigner for the Conservative Party and Zach Goldsmith said, "You're voting for the Muslim?" Now again, imagine if this was somebody to say, "Oh, you're voting for the Jew," how that would be perceived. Another former Prime Minister, David Cameron, used parliamentary privilege to then attack Sadiq Khan and claim that he supported the likes of Suleiman Ghani, who Cameron alleged was a supporter of ISIS, which is a totally false and utterly fabricated claim. Prime Minister Cameron also accused madrasas of creating extremism and that he would drain the swamp of extremism by monitoring, inspecting and potentially closing down mosques and madrasas. Look, I could spend hours going through all the various statements of Tory party members, councillors, MPs, former prime ministers to show the level of disdain and hatred they've shown towards the Muslim community and how they've radicalized and reinforced the environment that creates the very far right that Rishi Sunak is complaining against. And Labour Party are no better. I'll do a specific video on them, inshallah. But what this all shows is that mainstream politicians supported by the mainstream media who are creating this fertile environment of anti-Muslim hatred. And for the Tories, this is also an election strategy. As I mentioned, they know that they have completely destroyed the economy, high inflation, high petrol prices, high electricity and gas bills, failing health services. They've failed on law and order, making the average people unsafe. So what's the election strategy then? How are they going to win support? It's to blame the Muslims and immigrants.
Theresa May once warned the party about being the nasty party. I mean, is this now looking like not just nasty, but racist, Islamophobic, hateful party?
It breaks my heart to see my party being so toxic in this way. It breaks my heart to see them really reflecting the awful populist post-truth politics of the United States. And it breaks my heart to think that they believe, or colleagues believe, that, you know, projecting as somehow rabid racist is what's going to win them votes at the next election.
Divert attention away from the failures of their policies and then claim you need to be scared of these Muslims and immigrants and that only they, the Conservative Party, will be tough against Muslims and immigrants, so vote for them. And they're appealing to this type of ignorance that might exist or that exists within society. And with statistics from the poll in 2019, it's clear they have a willing audience within their own rank and file that would love to get this message out too. So let's not be gaslit by Rishi and his government, and let's expose how they foment hatred and division and then claim only they can put out the fire that they have created.